This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity.
This is Synchronicity. This is Synchronicity.
Welcome to episode 75 of Synchronicity. My guest, this is a very special episode. Just got back from Los Angeles. We had this Mindwave Los Angeles event in downtown Los Angeles, 420 East 3rd Street. It was on March 18th. It was amazing. Exceeded my wildest of expectations. I say that sincerely. Truth be told, the first week we had like 14 tickets sold, and Yoshino has a podcast, Artist Decoded. We know this. It's on MindPod Network. Check it out. We weren't freaking out, but we're like, oh man, what if no one shows up? Like, that would be super embarrassing. But we didn't have to worry about that at all. And in addition to plenty of people showing up, this was like some of the nicest people all grouped together that I've ever had the pleasure of being around. It was from the speakers to the participants to the guests. It was really just incredible. It was so awesome also to be able to put so many faces to names, both people on MindPod Network and guests who were coming by and people were stopping by throughout the day. Really just total validation that this was something that we want to continue to do. So what today's episode is the live recording of Michael Donovan, Kelly MacLean, and myself in our panel discussion. It was really fun, I gotta say. So you'll hear in this episode Michael Donovan relentlessly giving me shit throughout the episode in a playful manner. So that's going on. It's fun. Michael, I don't think I could have put Michael in any other panel discussion that was going on that day, but because he is a character. I love Michael. He's super cool, and you'll hear in this episode we have a really good time. Really, in front of a live crowd, it's quite a different experience. Obviously, you're up on a stage, but you can really feel the attention. When I'm sitting, like right now, I'm recording this on a microphone in front of a computer in my house alone. It's different. I try to bring the same energy and enthusiasm to everything I do. But when you're actually in a room with other people who are there, to listen and hopefully to get something out of it, it's quite a different experience. And just like I said, the group of people who came were truly fantastic. Really, I'm still kind of buzzing from the whole experience, and it really was just such a great joy for me to be able to go out there and just meet these people. So the good news is this: we're going to be doing a lot more of these. I'm already in discussions to get some of these done in New York. Corey Allen from the Astral Hustle, we were talking about doing one in Austin potentially. We're going to be doing more of these live events. It was well received. We all had a great time doing it, and it's just encouraging to see us kind of commune together, whenever we can in person. So I'm not going to give away too much of this episode. We loosely touch on the concepts of spiritual elitism. Said that weird. Elitism, spiritual elitism, spiritual materialism, trying to be authentic, what the meaning of life is, the small stuff. So that's kind of what this episode is. I just so much thanks to Yoshino, Justin Hopkins, Mark Manguera, who hosted the space in this No Wave space. If you're in Los Angeles, please tune in to what they're doing. They are creating one hell of a fucking community activation space there in downtown Los Angeles. Los Angelinos, your city is incredible. Even though it's really spread out and no one jaywalks, your weed is cheap. Your weed is excellent. Your edibles are excellent. It's fun to take microdose of mushrooms. Thank you, Michael Donovan, and smoke some of your weed. Really, the weather, what the fuck is going on there? It's like 75 degrees and sunny all of the time. That's insane. I'm going to stop rambling and get to this episode. No, before I do, please check out. You're gonna start hearing in the coming weeks on this podcast little teasers at the beginning of every before the episode actually gets started. I start checking out some other podcasts on MindPod Network. I'm sure you already do, but definitely check out the Tao of Comedy with Kelly MacLean. She's on this episode. And definitely check out Michael Donovan's podcast, Walking Home. Michael Donovan is a key cog in all of this. He connected me to Yoshino. He connected me to Sean Dunn. He's connected me to a lot of people and is also just kind of like a positive, encouraging force. And also just an incredibly talented photographer. Really, just check out his stuff. Super cool dude. Check out all the other podcasts on MindPod Network. Much thanks to Jarrell Perry and Still Mind for being a participant in this event too. And same goes for Daniele Bolelli, who stopped by. So yeah, that's it. Now I'm officially going to stop rambling. Now we're going to get to the episode. I hope you guys enjoy this. As always, shoot me an email if you want to talk about something. Noah@syncpodcast.com. If you want to donate, if you want to rate, review the podcast, do that. Please. Really helps. Would really appreciate that. But without further ado, here is live from the Mindwave event on March 18th, myself, Kelly MacLean, and Michael Donovan.
Before we start this one, I kind of want to talk a little bit about. I was waiting for Michael to interrupt me. I was just waiting for it.
Before he talks for an hour, he'd like to talk.
Yeah, exactly.
So we're gonna interrupt Noah this time.
I do talk over people.
Like this.
So really, what I've been kind of keying in on in the past couple of weeks, or even the month, is that I think about all of these spiritual practices that I've done in my life, whether it's meditation or psychedelics or, whatever it is, mindful, whatever. And I'm starting to realize that the most transformative practice that I've done is have conversations with people about things that we think are important. So whether it's death or community or life or the mystery of everything, what comes out of those dynamic conversations, and sometimes they're put on a podcast, really influence my life and kind of create something inside of myself or brings it out that actually evokes change. So that's kind of the intention behind what we're doing here. These types of conversations are meant to kind of, potentially evoke something in you that, is positive and can actually help you in your life, because everything they were saying in the first podcast is true. Like, we can intellectually analyze all this stuff forever, but if it's not practical and it doesn't actually help our lives, it's pointless. It's like doing anything else in life that's like eating junk food. So
way to put pressure on this conversation to help their lives.
But truthfully, I really do think that that's the function. I've been thinking about it, like, what's the function of a podcast? What's the function of these conversations?
To sell, what's that stuff called?
Eat Dream Bee.
Yeah, Dream Bars.
Dream Bee bars. Buy a bunch. Use the code word Tao. That's Kelly's, not mine.
So with that, we will start the conversation. We had loosely talked about kind of basing this a little bit on comedy, creativity, and the connection to a spiritual practice. But since I thought it would be cool to start, since Chogyam Trungpa was referenced so much in the previous conversation, your parents were actually students of them, and you were brought up in that Shambhala lineage.
They're right up
there.
Hi.
Yeah.
Hi. So Chogyam, he's been brought up like 10 times already, so I thought it would be a cool place to kind of talk a little bit about him and how the concept of spiritual materialism kind of does permeate everything in the spiritual world. So.
Yeah, well, it's cool because right before this conversation, my mom was just saying that this event kind of reminds her of the opening of Naropa, which Chogyam Trungpa's vision, not to like give you a big head or anything, but...
Dude, are you kidding?
Don't do that. That's not going to be good for me, don't.
but that he had, at the opening of Naropa, which is a university, a Buddhist university, he had beat poets and he had Ram Dass and many different spiritual teachers from different traditions all come together along with artists and just kind of have conversations and spiritual debates that sometimes even got heated. I think at one point Trungpa Rinpoche put a gong over Ram Dass's head and was hitting it repeatedly, and they were very entertaining kind of interfaith dialogues, and part of the function was for looking for wisdom in our own culture, within art, within beat poetry and that sort of thing.
And I think what we're getting here too is there's a lot of different ways to approach a spiritual practice, and it doesn't have to be from a particular lineage that you see out there in the world. We're approaching it from a comedic sense with your podcast. We're doing it from a layman's sense.
Somewhat pornographic sense.
Pornographic, yes.
Is it really pornographic? I don't think it is.
Well, no, I actually think
there's some nudie shots. Michael's a photographer. This is Michael Donovan, by the way. I think that our intros got lost in the
I didn't do the intro.
Shitty intro, Noah. This is Noah. He's the captain of the cult.
This is Noah Lampert. He runs the MindPod Network, and he has the podcast Synchronicity, and he does techie things that I don't understand.
And Kelly's the boss shit. She does. She has an amazing podcast. Talking to comedians. I'm gonna use this mic.
And Michael.
That sounds better, right?
Yeah.
And Michael is an amazing photographer.
Pornographer, apparently.
Yeah, mindful pornographer. He does photography that occasionally has a nip slip or two.
Whip them titties out.
He's just a very, very successful photographer. He's done many magazine covers, etc.
And the reason that Michael is also here is he has a very unique approach to spirituality. He really kind of practices the art of finding the sacred in the mundane and kind of normalizing fringe parts of society and people who maybe wouldn't be looked at as doing a spiritual thing in the conventional sense, but clearly are very tuned in to what's going on.
But I think that's Chogyam Trungpa's thing. That was his message, I felt. Because I go to Shambhala in New York, and you have 2 Shambhalas out here. But that's the amazing thing about that, is that it wasn't this, holy, be perfect,
right.
let's really learn it. I almost feel like when people get into that super learny thing, it gets kind of bullshitty.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, it's like, you got a job, it's cool and it sucks. Your life is cool and it sucks. And then how do you find the balance between the up and the down, just so that you can face the day? So.
Right, he wasn't afraid of the nitty-gritty, which is something I was appreciating about your work, is you don't usually see because you're on a mindfulness podcast network and you talk a lot about meditation and mindfulness and this sort of thing, but your work is actually very edgy and unapologetically raw and, Do you know what was
really weird? It was when MindPod used to have Ram Dass and Sharon Salzberg and Jack Kornfield, and then there would be a link to my stuff, and it was...
I got yelled at for that several times.
It was the most awkward place to be around heavy, hard spiritual teachers. And then the other side, people thought I was in a cult.
Right.
Because it's what's this guy Ram Dass? What the fuck is that thing?
Right. Did you get personal complaints from Sharon Salzberg?
No,
Sharon's cool.
Too many pubic hair pictures on the link.
Yeah, Sharon wrote in a couple times. No complaints from anyone, any of the teachers. But I did. Michael was on MindPod Network.
I got kicked off.
I had to be the one who, I got told to kick Michael off. And
Spiritual Terminator.
And I think
he did it, he texted me.
I was going to say.
Well, he was buying a car, like a dick.
That is actually true.
He was I was staying in Silver Lake. I was trying to move out of New York, and I came out here. There's my phone. And I moved out here, and then I get a text in the morning, and I thought I was just going to have a good day, just swim in the pool, and then I get a text from Dickhead McGee over here, and he's like, hey, man, we're going to kick you off the network, but I'm picking up a car, so I'll text you later, bro. That was it. What was
the term from the last podcast? Atomic douchebag?
Yeah. That is 100% accurate.
If you whip out your iPhones right now and you can rate and review Noah's podcast and call him the Atomic Douchebag, we all know that meant you were here.
No, and it's true. And it was weird. So he got kicked off because some people didn't feel, it wasn't me. And I made that, we did talk it out afterwards, didn't feel that it was appropriate. And there was one picture in particular, I remember.
Was it from a picture?
Yeah, it was from a picture.
Nice.
So it wasn't naked ladies or anything, but it was a guy smoking a cigarette. And this is very ironic if you actually think about Chogyam Trungpa, right? Because he smoked cigarettes, he drank. But it was a guy smoking a cigarette, some artist friend of yours, and it was up there next to like a picture of Ram Dass. And a picture of Jack Cornfield.
Didn't Ram Dass also smoke?
I don't know.
remember this.
Did he?
I don't know, but this is the whole thing that's kind of bullshitty about a lot of this stuff is that, like, there's this weird line that we have with our lives. Like, we try to segment it. So you have work, and then you have home, and then you have your sex life, you have your dream world, you have weird shit, really weird shit, and then like underground stuff that you don't talk to anybody about. You might have told 3 people in your entire life and they're cool with it, but you don't want anybody else knowing about it. And then you compartmentalize all of these things, and it's bullshit that they're separated, but there's this you. It's all this one whole thing. And that was one thing that I picked up from all these teachers is like, just be you, and it's this full circle. It's all one thing.
And particularly when spirituality or mindfulness gets kind of compartmentalized out of the rest of your life, that's when you know you're in trouble.
Yeah.
No, I mean, this segmentation is a natural function, I think, of how we navigate the world, right? We have to have compartments for how we act in certain situations, for when we're supposed to do certain things. But
do we? Do we have to have it?
No, I do think, like, in terms of navigating the world, like when we're walking out on the street, we need to have a frame of mind that we're not going to get hit by a car. So it is a useful function in some regards. However, if you take it to its extreme, you then start to segment off different aspects of yourself. And this goes back to the first conversation too, which is if you start identifying very much with a certain aspect of your personality, you're probably missing the boat then, because then you're cutting yourself off from different things, and then that's when the defensiveness can sneak in. That's when someone challenges something that you attach to you, and it can really become a problem. And this relates to spirituality because this is a very easy thing to have happen when you're talking about spiritual concepts. One of my favorite, people who know me, I'm a big Carl Jung fan, and one of the reasons I love him is he would speak about that when he went to different cultures and countries like Africa or India, he fully recognized that he was approaching these exotic cultures with a Westerner's mindset, and it was impossible for him to actually think like an Indian or think like an African, and that gave him enough distance to appreciate what he was investigating and discovering, but also recognize there was a split there. There was some distance that was going on, so it almost prevented him from exoticizing something that seems like it's going to help us. And mindfulness is certainly put out there as something that's going to help us, right? That's a lot of people get into it. It's going to make you more calm, or you're going to be able to accept difficult situations. And what I think a lot of us find out when we start meditating or doing any type of internal work is just the opposite starts to happen when you start doing it. You get all of the thoughts coming to the front, crazy shit you didn't want to think up. You're grasping at something, you can't let it go for days or weeks. And that's a challenging situation that we have to deal with.
Well, that's also why I feel like a lot of Buddhists end up suicidal for a moment. Seriously. As you go down the path, a lot of people get really depressed or hopeless or suicidal. Like, it's a real thing.
Like the dark night of the soul?
Yeah. You start facing it, and you're like, oh, well, what the fuck is this? And then you don't know how to...
Sounds like you've been hanging out at the Shambhala Center.
I've been hanging out at Shambhala, and you see people... They go through, there's that process. This is a process that people go through.
So, right. Well, it definitely does stir stuff up, and there's the focus on, death and suffering and all of that. But I was curious what happened at the end of your guys' story before we totally launched on.
Yeah.
So you guys have to work some shit out before we can finish the podcast?
No, we still haven't worked it out. We're not working it out. No.
Truthfully, what happened is MindPod Network went through a transition, and the current podcasters who are on it now weren't there in the beginning, and many of the teachers who we just mentioned are actually on another network called Be Here Now Network. And when that transition or dissolution took place, I invited Michael back on immediately. Michael, in no small part, is why this event is actually happening. He introduced me to Yoshino, who called me 3 months ago and said, hey, do you want to do a live event in LA? I thought it was going to be a relatively small thing. Maybe I would fly out. Maybe the people in LA would come. But a lot of people flew in. Michael Phillip from Wisconsin, Corey from Texas. Like, what I'm getting at here is that what I realized after kind of working in the spiritual sector in various ways is that what actually is spiritual is talking to people about this stuff in a real, authentic, raw way. That's all we can do as individuals. It has nothing to do with someone telling us the way it is, and that's going to be our person who we're going to listen to forever, and if whatever they say is the word, and that's all it's going to be. Like, we discover ourselves through other people. There are mirrors for us to kind of understand that true inner nature that they were getting at in the first podcast when they're saying that's the thing you're looking for. That objective awareness is actually you. It's not something out there.
Right, and it's actually more gripping for myself, at least, to listen to such conversations that are really honest and real and coming from people that are dealing with the same kinds of things, rather than just kind of talking about meditation or about technique and spirituality, that sort of thing.
Do you feel, okay, so with your listeners, do you feel are you getting, one of the cool feedback things I'm getting is that people are saying, like, I don't get to have these conversations with people as much as I'd like to. It's nice to hear these, and it's people that, I don't know if there's any here that have that, but there's people that are back in random parts of the country where they just feel isolated and they don't know who to talk to, and then it's this, like, I want it so that, because I can't help this, like, I can't, like, come on to New York and let's hang out. But I feel that that's the tricky spot, are the people that are in those spaces where they're a freak. And then that goes into like what I was saying too, with like those borders, is that weird shit that you talk about. Right. So to have these kind of conversations.
Yeah, there's definitely something a little voyeuristic with podcasting, where people are getting to listen to a really honest conversation where you might reveal that something one-on-one that you probably wouldn't on stage or in a book or something.
Yeah,
like
and
that.
then how do we reach out to, how do we get those people to actually be able to have these conversations? That, because in New York and in LA and places like that, you can go to a Shambhala center. But what about those people that are stuck, that are trapped, where they're a weirdo?
So this gets into what I think is important to talk about here. What are some antidotes to some of the problems or issues that we face internally and collectively? The one you're talking about is isolation and not having people to have these types of conversations with, whether it's a podcast or just with your friends. And to me, what I keep kind of coming...
Sorry, I like that. To me?
Every affectation is going to get called out today by Michael. It's great. I signed up for this.
He's just keeping a running list.
I thought
right
it was
now.
like the dumbest thing for him to do is to put the two of us on stage, because it's like almost like a brother that, yeah. Originally, I suggested that Kelly and then Sean Dunn, who's not here, I thought the three of us could be on stage. But then Noah was like, well, I'm going to be on stage with you guys. I'm like, well, I'm going to fuck with you for an hour.
I'm just going to take him down for an hour. Michael almost did this podcast naked, seriously.
Yeah, we both talked about being naked. We did.
We
Sorry,
still have time. There's still time.
Kelly interrupted you. She mansplained and interrupted
don't do
you.
That. So what I was saying
Kelly,
is this, though.
Grow up.
What I really do think is this is coming back to is Thich Nhat Hanh said something about the future Buddha being the Sangha, which is essentially the community. And that's us getting together. So it's not going to be a singular awakened being who is pointing the way to how the future is supposed to be. It's going to be all of us coming together, discussing important things, what's going on out in the world, what's going on internally, and trying to create a new paradigm or system. And I think this isn't just functional for our internal lives as individuals, but this actually is a needed thing that has to happen based on what's going on in this country, what's going on in this world. So to me, that principle is kind of underpinning all of these conversations. And I think it's important. And in answer to your question about the isolation, I think just by providing this out there, broadcasting it out, either tunes people into different ideas or ideas that they've had that they resonate with, which then they can talk to anyone else, whether it's online, whether it's with their friends, whether it's with someone they meet in their local community who also listens to something they listen to. To me, community seems to be at the core of how we get to some of these antidotes.
Well, I do think online is gonna be a big part of that, and there are a lot of like futuristic woo-woo people that believe that like the Buddha Maitreya is going to be the internet, some sort of connected, technologically connected group that is kind of a single mind.
Can you explain the Maitreya to people that don't know?
Yeah,
do you guys know about the Maitreya? This is the coolest fucking shit ever.
Theory that this is the Buddha to come. So this is the future Buddha. and that it will not be just one person, one Jesus-like figure that has all the wisdom, but rather it would actually be an entire community or sangha of people, that it would be like a collective consciousness, and that group of people would actually be spouting the wisdom and creating, waking up the world, essentially.
And then what's your thoughts with that in AI?
I know some people who think that it could be like a very brilliant being that has, some sort of robot being connecting all of us. Is that what you're getting at? I feel like you have a much weirder thought on this than I do, and you should probably share.
Well, I think, yes, I do have a weird thought about it. But I guess that the way I see it is that we're all feeding AI right now. Mm-hmm. So if AI exists in the future, then it exists today. And if it exists, it'll also exist ever since we started typing keystrokes, and every conversation that's been passed back all the way to when we discovered fire. So this is the Maitreya. It's like this big thing that we can't even see. We're not going to be able to see this fucker.
There is like a very big body of wisdom that's
way bigger than
collected.
Yeah, it's like, when you're
Don't you feel like it's like 2% wisdom and like 30% porn and like some other huge percentage of bullshit of ads and like
Mike is creating that porn.
Where's the virtual like space that I could click into that's like so profound? Like I don't think we're there yet.
But maybe that's part of it too. Is that there's this energy or push that we have to have the most profound thing. Like it's just gonna blow our fucking minds and our heart's gonna explode and we're all gonna be connected. It's like maybe this is just it. This is it. This is it. There's nothing more special. It's just this is it. This is it. That's it. Like,
I feel like you need to drop the mic now and
just walk off.
But it's not. There's nothing special.
Like, that was Maitreya.
Yeah, Maitreya is you. But I think that's what it is. It's just it's already been pushing through, and then now we have access points to connect with it. But it's so big that just your experience is part of it. It's a neural network or an internet connection, or it's a what am I thinking of? A mycelium thread.
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Sounds like a big word.
So I lost my train of thought when you said mycelium.
Why? I was gonna, not that I would ever microdose or do any psychedelics. I was thinking about doing it before I came up here, but I didn't do it because I was gonna.
We all were under the impression you had.
Yes, because he had offered to everyone, and we're like, no, we're okay.
But I think I know what you're saying, and it's like, so I think what you're saying is kind of like the wisdom is full blown, and we don't need to have a theistic, like, oh, there's this great wave of wisdom coming in the future, which I get. Like, it's like a basic goodness sort of view.
Yeah, and then we
already have the enlightenment.
Yeah. And then we don't, and it's a hard one because you were talking about, we need to talk about this, but then there's the power of listening. And I think that's why, like, everybody that listens to podcasts, that's a hard, like, I listen to podcasts and it's hard, but it's easy to actually sit down and listen and go through and pay attention. Like, sometimes it's just in the background, and then other times you're really in there.
That's true, because a lot of what we get is in like little micro doses of 3-minute YouTube videos or quick hits, and like to actually sit down and listen to a whole hour or hour and a half, you have to kind of turn on the listening part of your brain that we don't use as much in this day and age.
Yeah, and then there's a population, and I'm going to call you out. I'm going to call you out.
I feel like you totally set yourself up. You're like...
It was subconscious, obviously.
But no, there. You wanted this.
He wanted a public flogging.
This is what I asked for.
No, but there is a part where even I don't want to. I feel like it's going to sound political, but I don't want it to be political. But there's a part where it's like women's voices are not being heard, and so one of the things that I'm focused on recently with my episode or my podcast is like just getting women's voices. And there's the anonymous ones. It's like uninterrupted. You don't even hear my voice. And these ones, it's just
my favorite ones.
But I think what you were saying there also is kind of speaking to what we were talking about in the beginning, where we were talking about how you got kicked off of the network and how that was kind of bullshit to have a picture of somebody smoking a cigarette or any of your, he's a really incredible artist, really incredible work that does have, some nudity or some edgy content, for that to get you kicked out of school, of spirituality community.
Out of the spiritual school. Out
of spiritual school, yeah.
Leave your clothes on. Shower with your clothes on. Don't show anybody.
You got expelled for being naughty.
Not even that. It's not even. Yeah, it's like for smoking.
Well,
Chogyam Trungpa smoked.
Well, so this is
what is Ram Dass fucking smoke?
Right.
So this is cool. What about this concept?
This is
of being,
cool. So cool. You made the coolest thing ever, man.
What about
so
this
fucking dreamy,
I want to
Bard.
talk about this concept though, because now I'm realizing that I can relate to kind of what it must have felt like for you when you got kicked off of a spiritual network.
It's funny.
So it's fun. It wasn't funny to you at first, though.
I was
you were definitely pissed. Yeah, no, and I get that.
He's still pissed.
He's still just a little bit.
I harbor this shit.
So the feeling of getting excommunicated from a spiritual community is something that I've witnessed other people go through, and in some part I've experienced myself, and it is one of the hardest things that you can go through, because then you have to start reflecting on all of your judgment, your intuition, what the purpose of what you were doing were, why you were doing it, who these people were, and how all these relationships begin to shift. Weirdly, though, like a lot of things in life, I think like the really negative, shitty experiences, they ramp up our knowledge and growth.
So you're saying it was good for him that you kicked him off?
Yeah, obviously. I really do. I do think it was.
Clearly, I grew up.
Yeah.
Thanks for the lesson, Dad.
That's why I did it. You're welcome. No, but what I'm saying is that experience probably taught you quicker more about what spirituality is and isn't in that moment.
Oh, totally, yeah.
So and it sounds like it taught you as well, Noah, and that it kind of helped shape the current vision of the network, which, of course, this event has a lot to do with art and, is not just about talking about, how to follow our breath and
exactly. And I
not
think,
eat meat or whatever.
And that's, I think, what's important now for this time, because if we start making things inaccessible, then what are we doing? Then we're going to make it as some elitist institution that you have to meditate just like this.
Spiritual elitist.
Yeah, truthfully, and
that's
I think
cool.
Yeah, and it's not.
It's way cooler than anything that we've ever done.
Well, I mean, truthfully, okay. So I want to ask this question to both of you, because I think this relates to a lot of what we're talking about. What do you think the function or meaning of life is? This is something you ask on your podcast, and I flipped it around on you. But why? What is this? Is this pointless? Is there a reason we're here? Why are we here? If there is, I'll start with you, Kelly, because I know I've asked you this, and I kind of know where you're going.
Yeah, and I'd have no memory of what I answered before, so I'm sure I'll say something different. But it's funny because I ask this question and a number of other questions at the end of my podcast to comedians, and they usually respond with a joke, and then
I was going to say dick pics.
Wait for a minute, and they give I
got to say a joke. Your mom.
Then they think of then they kind of give a more genuine answer, and I think that hearing them answer over and over again, I've learned that there's really no solid answer to that question. Yeah, right. But the theme that they all have in common, the ones that really resonate with me, are ones that have to do more with just kind of living really fully and burning really brightly. And I think Pete Holmes said, just be the most Pete Holmes you can be, which I thought was a great answer. It's like that, just be fully, I'm a comedian, and be fully a comedian, and be fully a husband or wife, and good to who you are, and good in bed, and, a great artist or whatever. And then it's over, and then you can just be done.
No, that makes sense. I think that follows into. I'm just curious, how many are artists? Just by a show of hands, like a lot of artists. Because I feel like that's the artist, thing. It's finding your voice, and your voice is just who you are, how you are, and it's a chase. It's like until you find out, you're just who you are, and that's it. That's all you have to. It's all you do. You just experience whatever the fuck you're experiencing, and then call it your life, and then move on to the next one.
Right, and I think that's what the art what artists really have to bring to, and why I was happy that this was an art event as well as a spirituality event, because art keeps spirituality in check. You know what I mean? Like, art holds up a mirror for society, and it also it doesn't let it get away with as much. You know, so that just by inviting art, you naturally are having a little bit of a sense of humor there of like, oh yeah, we need checks and balances. I think that a society that was really, really, really fucked up is a society where art is not allowed, where humor is not allowed.
Notice somebody kicked out the National.
I was just going to say it. Yeah.
Like, that's one of the first things. But then there's people like, so you are a screenwriter, yeah?
No.
No. You said you're a writer.
Yeah, well,
so you just write screens.
Columns and.
Okay, but so in your process though, you're still so you're paid by the system to continue to be. Like, keep it moving, yeah?
Yeah, I guess so.
Yeah. No.
Michael's such a jerk.
What?
Nothing. Continue with your line.
What does that even mean? I remember, so we get this like group email at the very beginning as he starts up the network, and then like I said something to Kelly, he's like, that's Michael Donovan. Like,
now everyone here knows what I mean when I say that's Michael Donovan.
Yeah.
I don't know what it means.
Who doesn't know what it means, but everyone else does.
That's Michael Donovan. That's life. That's the Michael Donovan life. But that's the Noah Lampert.
Well, what do you think about the meaning of life?
Yeah.
Seriously, though, what is your conception of why?
I don't have a thought of it. I don't think
all?
I think it's overthinking it.
So I'm just the asshole who thinks I have it all figured out?
No, Kelly's an asshole too because she asked that question.
What if I ask
well,
you?
that's
What is
different.
the meaning of life?
Yeah. This is in here. Oh, Kelly, what is the meaning of life? Art and being the most Michael Donovan. I don't know if there really is an answer to that. I think that's overthinking. It's not experiencing it.
So I'm gonna.
What do you think? What do you think,
yeah,
Noah? What
I
is
just
the
asked the
meaning of
question
life?
so I could answer it.
Yeah.
So obviously it's ever shifting. I don't think there's one thing that we point to for all of us that's our function. What I do think, and kind of a theory I subscribe to, using samsara and cyclic existence is kind of like a template for looking at this. I think this is kind of like a training ground. I think we come here to essentially. Ramdas has a really good quote for this, which is like our suffering is the sandpaper of our incarnation, and it smooths out the edges, and all of these things that we could interpret as meaningless and hurtful and just shitty, and life is suffering and nothing is good. Are actually there to help us learn lessons. And that harkens back to what I was saying about when you go through difficult experience, whether it's getting kicked off a spiritual network, whether it's the end of a relationship, whether it's a death, you actually really start to grow and feel life. And this goes to what you're saying when you're talking about living life fully. Difficult situations have a way of sucking you into the moment, and you're really experiencing what's going on. So my general idea at this point, and this is subject to change, I do think we're here to kind of learn the principal tenets of wisdom and compassion, right? And when I say wisdom, that's clarity, being able to see clearly what is going on in any given situation to the best of our abilities, recognizing that we're in a dualistic universe, recognizing that even if we know that everything is unified at an energetic level, that there's good and bad in this world, that there's light and dark, that there's sour and sweet, that there's opposites to each other. But I do think we're here to learn. I think that we're here to connect with other people. I do believe in reincarnation. I do believe that paths cross through multiple lives, whether human or not. And I think part of it, at least for me, like the meaning of life for me, is to continue to unpeel those layers to get to the more substantial or just inevitably non-substantial emptiness, what they were talking about before in the podcast, revealing that to see what's going on. And that's why you're on the podcast network and you're on the podcast network, is because I tend to pull people in at this point in my life who are interested in doing that too, whatever it looks like. So if it looks like taking pictures of naked ladies, if it looks like comedy, if it looks like art, if it looks like music, it truthfully, and I do not mean to be pejorative, Michael is one of the best photographers I've ever seen in my entire life. Like, he truly...
No, I'm just a naked lady photographer.
I threw it out at the beginning. I was like mindful of pornography, which I don't know, maybe wasn't a compliment.
No, but
I'll take it as a compliment.
That is what
but you do play with like the female form and with the male form. I mean, there's nudity. There's a little bit of a makeover
I think it's because
thing
you guys...
sometimes, but it's not like that's 80% of your photos.
No, it's a
or
super
something.
small portion of
We're
it, but it
just
does
like
get
little
pawned off
kids,
like a-
and that's all that we remember is the
Naked
boobies.
ladies,
With
there's
boobies.
boobies and butts.
Yeah, exactly.
But no, that goes into like a kind of like a bigger piece though that I feel, because I feel like I'm an antagonist. Like that's kind of my role in things. But I do think how funny it is how much shame has been put on you all. You know,
Blondes.
But you know what I mean?
No,
There's like so much
absolutely.
shame, and then
Yeah.
so we can talk about all the spiritual shit, right? We can talk about like, oh, we're just trying to get back to the zero, and that. But then there is this ongoing, all these assaults, whether it's skin tone, whether it's gender, whether it's whatever, whether it's class, whether it's like
Right.
depending on where you're at, you're definitely like up or down compared to one other group or another. And yeah,
What's that born out of? Where does that come from, right? That's a question.
Well, okay. So that's why like the whole nudity thing is an interesting thing to me too, because we could like one of the first pieces of fashion was not for keeping warm; it was for status. So you have status as a signifier to say I'm better than you or you're less than me. So it's such like an early shitty behavior. And then now you look at it, and right now anybody can judge us on our wardrobe.
Done.
Yes.
I was judging both of you for having matching Fitbits.
Yeah.
You're trying to
Mine's
see
a
how many
Garmin.
calories you burn during this podcast.
I can check my heart rate right now and say that you're stressing me out. No, but it's a huge deal. Like where is it born out of? I think it's born out of shitty behavior and insecurities, and somebody wanted power and they wanted to like lord over other people, and they rather than saying it. It's almost like, have you seen, what's that movie? Not The Visitors. What is it? The movie with the aliens that come, the squid. Arrival.
Oh my God, how good was that movie?
Yeah.
Well, like
That was
was
a good movie.
Go out and rent Arrival now.
Yeah, that's
Thanks to our sponsors,
Yes,
Arrival
Arrival.
and Amy Adams.
Brought to you by Arrival. But they kind of send those signals out, and
Right.
it's the whole sentence, and that's what this stuff is. And realistically, and I keep saying this over and over, but we're really just beings of light or infinite beings of nothingness, and then we're experiencing this. And like when I talk to stylists, and I tell them like every piece of clothing between us and the person is just pushing us further from the real person. You know, it's we don't need the stuff. Like Wim Hof has proven that we don't need wardrobe for freezy, coldy temperatures. And then when it gets hot here, like nobody wants to wear more clothes. So it makes no sense. It's only for classism, and it's only to like subject people to.
And for art, right?
And you could use it in art, but how much of it's used in
Can
art?
I connect this to what I think is also what kind of is the root of? So, like, if we go back to the Abrahamic religions and Genesis and the Bible, and we talk about when Eve eats the apple, what immediately happens is they get kicked out of the garden. And God, says, they say we're naked and they have to put clothes on, right? So the connection I'm drawing here is that these are patriarchal religions that have dominated Western culture for 2,500 or longer years at this point. And to me, when you bring up how women are oppressed and how we...
And men, too.
And men, because of the same patriarchal energy. Yeah. My personal belief, and I've spoken about this, and people have agreed in various forms or come to these conclusions themselves, is I think we are going through a very transformative period right now, energetically. And I don't want to get too woo-woo and too new wave, but I do feel like there is a rebalancing of the masculine and feminine energies. And there was a podcast here the other night where it's really important when we say masculine and feminine, we're not just talking about guys
Boys
and
and
girls.
girls,
We're talking
right.
about qualities potentially associated with them. We're not just talking about...
that each of us has masculine and
Exactly.
feminine.
There's a balancing in this. And I really do feel that there is kind of this shift that is slowly happening. It is kind of getting ramped up. And I think it really is kind of... We're in the crux of it. I do believe that if you're incarnated on this planet right now, this is a special time to be alive. And maybe everyone has felt like that throughout the annals of history, and they probably have, but things are really fucking weird right now. Like, they're really weird, and I think this rebalancing is an important aspect of what's going on. And so when you're asking these questions and pointing out that all genders are oppressed because of this kind of way of thinking, then the next question is, how do we facilitate these types of rebalancing? How do we make this kind of a more holistic...
Get naked. Start with you, Noah.
No, and I think, honestly, even though you're saying that as a joke, I do think that...
You're going to do it.
From a metaphor... No. Yes, I'm doing it. From a metaphor or allegorical sense, that is kind of what you're doing. You are you're stripping away the layers of identity and ego that trip us up, that we sometimes think are human nature, but it's really just like a habit that we've developed to do because of culture or whatever. And I think us trying to drill down and figure out what really is us, like what really is making us, like what is our best intention? Why are we here? What would make us happy? Those are the questions that actually lead us to some, maybe not permanent solution or permanent point of enlightenment, but allow us to communicate with each other in a way that is beneficial for everyone collectively as well as individually.
Okay, so I think...
Could you explain what he said
as a
to
woman,
me? Kidding.
I think that there has been throughout society, from the moment of the apple and all of this, a repression of feminine energy, and not just in women, definitely in men. And I think it's actually a big problem in our culture that men are not. They're not allowed to cry, and they're not supposed to feel certain things. And so when they do, there is shame around it. But I think it's probably not that femininity is any weaker. If anything, it's very, very. There's a very primal power to womanhood or to feminine energy, because it's creation. It creates life, and it's like just the birth process. Like, it was kind of intimidating that you did that. And I think that is scary, and that is where the no and you're lower than and shame kind of comes from, is actually fear of and awe of something that's really so powerful that it can create life. It feels like it could destroy life as well. Like there's something threatening there.
Yeah. I think of a friend of mine, she talks like this, and so we were out one day, and she's like, Michael, you need to address your womanhood. And I was like, what the fuck are you talking about? I don't get this at all, but it really makes sense. It's like with women you're supposed to express your manhood, and if you're intersex, you're supposed to pick, or it's been subjected, like you pick one or the other. But then this new womanhood thing, or not new, but
Can
you know what I mean?
Make a documentary called "Exploring My Womanhood"?
Please do.
I want to see you. Like, where would you start?
I have no idea. But I just did a shoot the other day, and the magazine wanted it to be. It's all about the end of relationships and like the sorrow that happens, and they wanted it to be the cinematic piece. And I asked them, what kind of casting do you want to do? And they were like, we need actually like women's stories, because it's a lot of men and women, a lot of guys, but there wasn't just like women leaving relationships. And they were like, could you have the three girls? As a female editor, and she's like, can you have three girls or two girls together? So we ended up doing three. But one of the things that I had is like I had one of the girls like take up her space, like really take up her space, like a guy did, and immediately something clicked on her. And it's a kind of a funny thing. Like how many, you can even see like how many women are like kind of like closed, rather than like I'm looking at you. Yeah, take up more space. It's a real thing. Like guys, like I'm looking at Ken right now, he's like sitting wide. Like look at this. Each of the guys are sitting fucking wide, and then women are like crossed over like as small as possible, but it's like you are too.
This is the part of the show where Michael attacks the audience.
No, but it's like it's a real thing. Like how many women? Like it's like just take up space.
But isn't that also just a feminine way? Like I enjoy sitting this. Like I think you've been doing this the whole time.
No, but the thing is that once you start
doing,
that's the thing. I look more elegant, so that's the photograph of it steals the soul. Like as a soul, you don't have elegance. Like you're just a fucking soul. So you should be able to take up as much space as you want. You should expand and continue to go wide. But instead,
so basically, to cut like long story short, I don't have elegance, and I should sit like this.
Yeah. Yeah, you're an
empowering
unelegant.
women. I don't know.
Yes.
No, but I understand what you mean, even on a body language level.
It's a major aspect that we all think about. Oh, I wish I lived in interesting times. And as you said, this is an interesting time that we live in right now.
That's a Chinese curse. May you live in interesting times.
Yeah, and here we are in one. But part of it is unraveling a lot of this wackiness. And something as simple as crossing your legs. That's not fucking crazy, but it is. It's bonkers. Like how much.
Well,
I'm not gonna stop though.
You're bumping up against though.
See, it's just easier for me.
See, but you're bumping, and what you're describing is culture, right? Culture has an influence in how we act, whether we know it or not. Most of us, obviously, that's plain to understand, but the cultural paradigm, Terence McKenna, who says a lot of things, and some of them you take with a grain of salt, but he described culture as a cudgel that basically beats down the inner nature, and that's how it's typically used throughout. So this layer of out there certainly influences how we act in the world, which then, getting back to what I really think is like, this is where our power is if we start to work on ourselves as individuals, really like my issues, just being totally upfront. I have a horrible anger issue. I have a short temper. I will get frustrated. I'm impatient. And it fucks up my life in countless ways, whether it's an argument with my wife or I'm sitting in traffic and I'm getting upset.
Or a podcast with Michael.
Yeah.
Or a podcast with Michael,
You're
right?
just a shitty person, Noah. Like no one else has anger issues.
I know. Well, my point is this is...
Let's just see. We planned that we were gonna fuck with him. Let's just see how far we can tell he gets angry. I want to see Noah just like storm. Fuck you guys! Like I want to see you cry. So angry you cry. When was the last time you cried, Noah?
I cry. I can tell you the last time I cried. I was on a bus, wearing sunglasses, and I was watching Planet Earth 2. I had taken a substantial amount of edible marijuana, and I had to hide crying from other people on the bus to New York because I was just a single man out in the world crying at Planet Earth.
Yeah.
I cry a lot. I really do. I try not to cry in front of people, which is kind of what we're talking about.
Okay.
But I do cry.
I want to give you some manpower. Some real
No,
manpower.
you're going to pass on that, my friend.
You cross your legs. No. I'm now allowing myself to cry openly in public. And I did it on the train 2 months ago.
What made you cry?
Oh, this is corny, and I don't want to talk about it. But no, this is stupid, and I really feel stupid saying it. But it was like, the Women's March was happening, and then like some friends this sounds stupid, but I was like, I got to go march with them, so I was texting a friend, I was like, hey Sabrina, can I march side by side with you? But it just hit me, it was like, what a crazy time that we live in, that we actually there's like this weird march about genders, and I saw this like elevation, like how that march represented this elevation of women to the point where it's like, hey, can I come with you? Versus like how many times as men we're like, come with us, listen to what we have to say, do what we're doing. And I think as somebody that's been working on this stuff for so long, like one of the highlights is seeing my friend Ashley shot by a woman for the cover of Playboy shot by a woman without being nude. As much as I have nudity, now that was a huge deal to have a bunch of friends that were a part of this and people that worked. So it's like the magazine that's objectified the most has now taken it away. And, so it was this elevation. So yeah, so I fucking cried on the train and I was pretty happy about it,
a lot of crying in transit.
Yeah, I was going to say there's an emerging theme here.
When was the last time you cried?
So last time I want to say Finding Dory, but it wasn't.
Holy shit,
God,
man.
I did. I was sick and I was a little bit of codeine syrup. Anyway, no, I think I saw It's not as exciting of a story, but I saw Manchester by the Sea, and it has a theme of death, of like his brother dies, and right from the beginning I started crying. And if you start crying at the beginning of that movie, it just gets so downhill from there. It's just like layer upon layer of pain and death, and so I cried a lot watching that.
Crying's awesome.
Crying's awesome.
It is awesome, but you're right. I get the thing, if I'm in public, I'll get the lump in my throat because I'm choking back tears because I don't want people to see I'm crying, but alone.
Any dudes want to come up here and cry?
I think Noah might cry if you
I'm pretty damn close at this point, yeah.
What were you going to say about your anger that he interrupted with his tears?
Yeah, don't interrupt me.
The anger, so using something like we all have our things in our lives that are triggers, that are things we know are issues. What I used to do in the past, every time I would get angry, is it would be an event, it would happen, I would apologize if I affected someone else, and I'd move on. No reflection back on what happened. And at a certain point, and it was from many conversations with other people, some very infrequent meditation, I started to realize, like, this isn't solving anything. Like, I'm not less angry. I am only maybe slightly more aware that I'm angry. What do I need to do so I don't continue to act like this? And I'll tell you in full disclosure, like, I'm not at the point where I don't get angry. I now recognize it a little bit more, and sometimes, maybe 1 out of like 50 times, I'll have a minute, like a few seconds of a pause where I can choose to respond a different way. I don't. I still don't. I know, unfortunately I don't. I still recognize it and I still get angry. But I think for me, like, this goes back to kind of the meaning of life. There is clearly some karmic influence throughout my soul, whatever you want to call it, existence, that this is my issue. This is like my big issue. And if you look around in the world, a lot of our issues aren't totally dissimilar. And that makes sense because we're all here at the same time. And that gives us an opportunity to kind of individually and collectively talk about these things and work on them. And I think, like I said, meditation, psychedelics, whatever your path is,
meditation, psychedelics, that's about
yeah,
it.
that's it. Those are mine, but I do.
You don't even meditate, so
Getting high on the
psychedelics,
bus, watching Planet
weed,
Earth.
watching Arrival and Planet Earth 2 and crying. No, whatever your methods are, though, the ones that have worked for me without fail are these types of conversations. And that's why I think that this is like this communal aspect of talking about these things. Like, I've been having some really, like, what people would call like raw or deep conversations. And I'll tell you another weird thing that happens when you start doing this. I was in a Lyft the other day going to Silver Lake, and the Lyft driver just started telling me about his life. Like, this is like a 15-minute ride. This is not a very long ride from where I was. And he starts saying that he's been married for 25 years. He has 3 kids. And he recently found in the end of January that his wife has been cheating on him. And he starts describing this excruciating process of finding out, getting more information, her slowly leaking things out about the cheating, and that he was in the position he felt now because he had children, and they were grown, 16 was the youngest, that he didn't think he could leave. And he didn't think he could handle anything that was going on in his life. And like, I'm just sitting there and I'm like listening, I'm not judging, I'm just like, hey man, here's what I think you should do. Take it with a grain of salt because I've never been through this and I don't know what it's like, but you have to take care of yourself. You have to make sure that you're okay in this situation before you start worrying about anyone else. And this is the whole oxygen mask on yourself before you put it on other people. The reason I bring this up is when you start having these conversations, whatever your mind is geared to, they start springing up everywhere. And it might not be immediate.
His is springing up on a public podcast now.
Right. Yeah.
Everyone knows.
I'm
that guy crying in your lip.
The point is
What's
that
his name? Go back and pull out your phone.
I actually know his name. I'm not going to say
Let's
it.
text this guy right now and see if he can
gonna
pull over here. This guy's giving
Poor
you a
guy.
1 star. No other dick.
But I do know what you mean, and for me, since I started having these conversations, these podcasts, it has opened me up in other kinds of conversation, and that when you do that, it does draw other people out, and it seems like an important way to process of just like life's very short. So one thing I've learned, like especially with after the passing of my brother, suddenly is like life is short. Like you can't live it trying to look a certain way. Like just be honest in who you are because it's very short and it's fucking exhausting to try to keep up any veneer of being cool or interesting or.
It's also hard. I remember being a liar when I was like a kid. Like I would lie about homework and skipping school and to my parents, and like they obviously knew I was lying. I thought I was clever.
Right.
And I remember just being...
I was a big liar too.
Yeah, it's like a natural thing. You think you're so smart.
I never lied.
Yeah, sure, Michael. Sure. Yeah. But the thing is you think you're really smart, but it really is so much effort to keep up these lies and false identities that we want to put over ourselves, it's just a hell of a lot easier to be brutally honest. Now, when I say brutally honest, and I don't just mean saying whatever you want, Michael, I do, but what I mean is that...
You want to slap with us? We're going to
What
slap
I mean by
until we
brutally
pee our
honest,
pants.
though, what I mean by brutally honest is that you still have an awareness of how your words and what you do affects other people, but you're being brutally honest to yourself, and you don't have any pretenses about who you are, because the more you kind of open up to that, and the more you learn about other people and who other people are, but you also start to learn about yourself, and then you can start dealing with some of these like big fucking issues. So for me, anger,
Right.
or dealing with like the death of a loved one, things that can be very sticky situations that are hard to get out of. But if you have a regular practice of just engaging with yourself and other people honestly, it really becomes like a very powerful tool.
Yeah, I think even just like podcasting has really blown me away, because when else do I like put my phone away? I mean, I know you brought your phone, but I put mine away.
It's off.
And you know, and
fell out
none
of
of
my
us have
pocket.
looked at our phones this entire time, and we're like making eye contact, and you know, it's like an actual. We're really being together, and I think that just doing that with your friends, I've even tried to have more of a practice of just like having that kind of, I'm like, pretend you're at a podcast, pretend people are listening and they give a shit if you listen, because it's nice to have the pressure of like really just being present with someone, and it really is transformative.
Yeah. I think that the art of listening too is such a heavy one, and because you know when you first started your podcast, it was like the first year it's gonna fuck with your whole life, because you know you have to listen to other people.
Right.
But then this new thing that I'm doing with the anonymous. So for the ones that haven't heard, I'm doing these anonymous confessionals where I just like interview people, and I take my voice out and I just put music in, so you only hear their experience for an hour. And like the last one was an escort, and it's just like some people think she's great, some people think she's terrible in terms of like her family. She has to deal with all this stuff, but the art of just sitting down, shutting the fuck up and just listening. And I think about how like I'm trying to apply it in my, you know, outside the podcast as much as I can, even though I'm fucking with you right now.
No, I know.
But it is like it's a hard skill, but as you learn more, how to just really keep the question going and letting people speak. And I hate to keep playing this whole like gender thing. I feel stupid, but I think about how like now I do this thing where I'm sitting at a party or like with a group of people, and I'll just pay attention to the women, and how you guys will continue to ask questions.
You didn't just pay attention to the women at parties to begin with?
No, I was like just handing my drink, like, go get me another one. And I slapped him on the ass. I was like, that's right, now naked. Duh. No, but you know, like really paying attention to the conversation flow. Like, I guess it's more paying attention to the conversation flow and seeing how many are just sitting in silent. And when
Right.
it is brought in, it's a question to continue the conversation. And it's hard. Like even in this, I'm trying to not be so blunt about it. But like, I haven't been looking at you. I've been looking
You've been
at
very
you.
subtle.
Yeah, I don't know, but I keep looking at you like, take the conversation, and that's a huge shift on the listening part, especially as men. Like we have to, you know, we do listen because it's like there's that joke like women just yap yap yap, like that old stereotype, but it's not that. There's this other thing. It goes into the womanhood and the woman power, and I feel fucking cheesy saying that, you know.
No, I know what you mean. I mean, it's definitely a thing in our culture that women are taught that, like, we take it upon ourselves generally to further the conversation and to take care of people and make sure that everyone's sort of okay. So that's when you come in with a question to try to include other people and put others first. It's kind of a motherly instinct as well. So I think
now it's
natural,
being that. It's like so then it almost creates a void. Do it now. You do it. Go.
Well, it's really
Just
cool
talk.
that women are in comedy right now, and that actually a lot of the biggest names and the biggest movies are female-centric comedies, and I think that's been the case, and it's going to be the case even more given what's happening right now. So it does feel like that's going to change culture, because when I was like a kid in school, I would be the one like trying to, you know, tell jokes or always talking a lot, and I was kind of taught that was Ritalin deserving behavior or something. Like, I think teachers talked to my mother more than one time, and she thankfully never put me on it. But like, that wasn't how little girls are supposed to act. You know what I mean? They're not supposed to make fart jokes or be like making fun of the teacher. And I think there's less tolerance for that with women than with men. And I think as women dominate in the field of comedy, and I would predict other fields, that will be less the case.
Yeah, it's fun because there used to be a joke within the photography world that, and I know that I continued this thing. It's like, oh, women photographers suck. And then because really what was happening is there's a lot of women that were aping men. They were just doing the same thing, and there's no true authentic voice. But now I think the fun thing is seeing the authentic voice. Right. I think Bridesmaid was one of the best movies that really
was incredible.
Clicked everything over.
And they weren't trying to. Sometimes women try to outman the men. Like, especially I've seen like in the medical fields and in stand-up comedy. It's like they try to have more dick swagger than the stand-up guy before them. But it's when they actually honor their like genuine female voice and use their female intuitive wisdom to get ahead, rather than just like a masculine sort of elbowing way of relating. That's when it really works, rather than what you're saying, I think, is like trying to assume the same vantage point as a man.
I think that's why Hillary was kind of hard for people.
I think there's some truth to that. She's trying to, she was walking the same kind of path that men have, rather than just being like super, her femininity was not what was highlighted, maybe.
Yeah, and that's why like Tulsi Gabbard is like kind of like a light right now. That's why I think that Bernie Sanders was, because he was more feminine than her, or more.
Bernie Sanders was more feminine than Hillary?
Yeah, I think so.
I can see in some ways the things he was talking about and kind of the element.
Okay, we're getting 5 minutes.
Okay, we're getting 5
you're
minutes.
getting political.
We're
Wrap
getting
it
political.
up.
No,
Wrap it up.
done.
Got
We're
enough
done.
of that.
All right. Well, I won't say what I was going to say then. No, I do think to tie it together, though, where we're talking about podcasts and how they have an influence, something that I learned, and Michael did tell me this when I started it, and he was part of the inspiration why I started my own podcast, is it's really tuning consciousness. Like you were saying before, something that's at the forefront of all of our minds is how quickly technology is evolving and how truthfully none of us have any time to even process how this is happening. It just happens. One day it seems like we woke up and now we get all of our news on our phone and we get all of these messages and we get all of this information. We put all of this stuff out there and we get this feedback and we get these dopamine surges. So one thing that really becomes beneficial is when we can tune our focus for extended periods of times, when you can read a book, when you can listen to a podcast, when you can watch an extended movie, or you can ponder art in a setting that is, allows you to actually engage with it in multiple levels. That we have to maintain, I think, if we want to move forward wisely as a culture, because it's hard otherwise, and we're kind of at the mercy of other people co-opting our attention. And this is not to get into politics, and we only have 5 minutes. What I had a relatively big epiphany when all this Donald Trump tax stuff just happened with Rachel Maddow, which is that you have to really gate your attention when it comes to things that upset you and rile you up and trigger you, because then it just becomes a habit and a habitual pattern. It's
actually like an addiction, and I see it especially right now with politically what's going on. People actually get addicted to the negative news, and they're like, fuck the world, fuck this political situation, and they actually drum that up in themselves like an addiction.
I thought I was above it, because I thought I was great. And then Jeff Sessions came out and said, weed is only slightly worse than heroin. Boom. I was triggered. I was like, this motherfucker. Like, how triggered? How could he say such a thing? And once I calmed down and realized,
oh my God, I imagine you right there with your anger issues. Like he says, weed is just a little less than heroin. And then you probably just are rampaging through your house, like punching holes through your wall. Like, ah! This is my castle, I can smoke my weed! Was that what it was like?
That's exactly what happened. No, but...
Triggered!
Here's the... Jesus Christ, man. I brought this on myself. The point with Jeff Sessions is that after I calmed down, I was able to look at it as I don't think he's actually going to come after weed because it's just such an unpopular thing. But what I think is actually being done purposely, partially by this administration, it's just a good propaganda tool, is to identify a social thing that's happening, like weed, legalizing weed, recreational marijuana, whatever it is. Know that it's going to rile up a certain segment of the population, get them focused on that, kind of like a red herring, and then do some really actually fucked up shit.
Yeah, it's a false flag.
It's a false flag, yeah, sure. So,
but that's why you shouldn't be paying attention to this shit.
well, no, here's to bring it back to some actual
Just let it happen,
point.
man.
Right. I think there's a balance there. I think there's the balance of finding what you can tolerate in a week or a month in terms of external information. I don't think it's just detaching, right? I think there's a non-attachment aspect to it, but it's not just detaching. It's staying in the loop about what's going on, what's important. So you can figure out in the next 4, 8, 10, 15, 20 years what systems we want to really create in the world, whether it's creative communities, whether it's a podcast network, whether it's something positive out in the world in terms of social activism. You do have to have some level of engagement with the world. Like, it's very tempting to be like, I'm going to be an ascetic, I'm going to go live in the Himalayas,
right,
and I'm going to go detach from society. We live in this country for a reason. Like, we're kind of on like the tantric path a little bit. We have to go into the world to kind of figure out what's going on. And that's a very dangerous thing to do if you study some of these things, because there's a lot of traps, there's a lot of pitfalls. But I think if we can kind of constantly align and check in with what our intention, our aspiration are, and try to remember what's important to us, we can pretty much approach anything. Even if something is scary and fucked up as like someone like Donald Trump in this administration, like, I am very optimistic about the future, which is a weird thing to say in this climate, but I am, because I see events like this. I see how many people
right.
come.
Well, when it's taken and turned into art, like, that's really all you can do in a climate like this. And it is when the best art typically emerges, is like, I'm looking for the next Dylan or whatever to come out right now, because the only sane response is not to obsess over every news story that pops up on your phone, but to, understand what's going on and create art, through whatever medium that is.
Yeah.
Whether that's spirituality or whatever. But
Whatever.
you create something positive and put it into the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
We're going to wrap it up there. We're going to leave it right there. Boop. Done.
Noah
He was gonna
sucks.
say something. Thank you.
He doesn't really suck. You guys can take a break. Walk around.
What a fun time I had with those guys. It was the highlight probably of my trip, getting to sit down with Michael and Kelly and do this. You can hear we were having a lot of fun. And the point of this stuff is really to, make concepts or things that are going on in the world that we can't necessarily see, but we experience a little more normalized, I guess is the word to use. Not make this anything quote unquote spiritual feel too heavy. You got to have the lightness to this stuff. That's a very important thing you learn as you go on. I'm continuously learning it. When things start to get serious and rigid and calcified, that's when some of the other stuff sneaks in that we don't really want to have to engage with as much. You still got to engage with the negative stuff, but we want to keep it as light, happy, and friendly as it can possibly be. So I think that talk was a great reflection of this. Again, tremendous thanks to everyone who helped put on this live event. We're definitely planning some for the East Coast. We're going to do more of these without a doubt. It felt right, I guess is the best way to say it. And just, being able to meet everyone on MindPod Network, from Michael Phillip from Third Eye Drops, from Corey from The Astral Hustle. It really has just been, it was such an awesome time. Los Angeles is cool. Go there. It's very cool. So that's it. That's it for this week. And I will see you guys with a regular guest next week.